If I had my life to live over again, I would have made a rule to read some poetry, and listen to some music at least once every week. A man who dares to waste 1 hour of time, has not discovered the value of life. If the misery of the poor be caused not by the laws of nature, but by our institutions, great is our sin. We stopped looking for monsters under our bed, when we realized that they were inside us. The love for all living creatures is the most noble attribute of man. I am not apt to follow blindly the lead of other men. The mystery of the beginning of all things is insoluble by us, and I for one must be content to remain an agnostic. An American monkey, after getting drunk on brandy, would never touch it again, and thus is much wiser than most men. Blushing is the most peculiar, and most human of all expressions. Intelligence is based on how efficient a species became at doing the things they need to survive. One general law, leading to the advancement of all organic beings, namely, multiply, vary, let the strongest live and the weakest die. In the long history of humankind, and animal kind, too, those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. Besides love and sympathy, animals exhibit other qualities connected with the social instincts, which in us would be called moral. We must, however, acknowledge, as it seems to me, that man with all his noble qualities, still bears in his bodily frame the indelible stamp of his lowly origin. Man selects only for his own good, nature only for that of the being which she tends. Great is the power of steady misrepresentation. I see no good reasons why the views given in this volume should shock the religious views of anyone. Man in his arrogance thinks himself a great work, worthy of the interposition of a deity. More humble, and I believe truer, to consider him created from animals. For the shield may be as important for victory, as the sword or spear. Freedom of thought is best promoted by the gradual illumination of men's minds, which follows from the advance of science. There is no fundamental difference between men and animals in their ability to feel pleasure and pain, happiness and misery. To kill an error is as good a service as, and sometimes even better than, the establishing of a new truth or fact. It is always advisable to perceive clearly our ignorance. We are not here concerned with hopes or fears, only with truth as far as our reason permits us to discover it. We are always slow in admitting any great change of which we do not see the intermediate steps. The very essence of instinct is that it's followed independently of reason. We will now discuss in a little more detail the struggle for existence. A scientific man ought to have no wishes, no affections, a mere heart of stone. Wherever the European had trod, death seemed to pursue the aboriginal. In conclusion, it appears that nothing can be more improving to a young naturalist than a journey in distant countries. Natural selection almost inevitably causes much extinction of the less improved forms of life and induces what I have called divergence of character. A fair result can be obtained only by fully stating and balancing the facts and arguments on both sides of each question. Only picture to yourself a nice soft wife on a sofa with good fire, books and music. Often a cold shudder has run through me, and I have asked myself whether I may have not devoted myself to a fantasy. One hand has surely worked throughout the universe. The expression often used by Mr. Herbert Spencer of the survival of the fittest is more accurate, and is sometimes equally convenient. I have tried lately to read Shakespeare, and found it so intolerably dull that it nauseated me. I am dying by inches, from not having anybody to talk to about insects. Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. We stop looking for monsters under our beds when we realize they are inside us. Englishmen rarely cry, except under the pressure of the acutest grief, whereas in some parts of the continent the men shed tears much more readily and freely. It is necessary to look forward to a harvest, however distant that may be, when some fruit will be reaped, some good effected. Our descent, then, is the origin of our evil passions. The devil under form of baboon is our grandfather. What wretched doings come from the ardor of fame! The love of truth alone would never make one man attack another bitterly. A moral being is one who is capable of reflecting on his past actions, and their motives of approving of some, and disapproving of others. Such simple instincts as bees making a beehive, could be sufficient to overthrow my whole theory. Origin of man now proved. Metaphysics must flourish. He who understands baboon would do more towards metaphysics than Locke. A naked man on a naked horse is a fine spectacle. I had no idea how well the two animals suited each other.